Yes, this is Dr. Noel Ridsdale again with week 5 as we're moving right along here in the term and for MG350 leadership. So when we take a look at week 5 here, we're going to start looking at teamwork as our first part of it. And the second part of it, we're going to be looking at engagement and how to get the most out of individuals. So when you start to take a look at teams and teamwork, basically a team is any work group that works collaboratively to basically gets to experience success. So that team work and those teams can be small, they can be large. I always refer to mine as a team, no matter how small or large they were. There was just smaller teams within that subset, but there was always a larger team. So each smaller subset of a team worked harder to become part of the overall team. Teamwork is getting work done by an understanding of a commitment to group goals. That's for everybody. In our case, it was pretty easy. In my world, it was to get the food out on time and everything looking really, really good. That was the goal. Everybody understood that. All teams are groups, but not all groups are teams. This is a key aspect, okay? So teams are ones that work together towards a common goal. You can have groups of people around, even within teams, but they're not really functioning as part of moving forward. That's the big part of this aspect, is you're really wanting them to move forward. Team is characterized by a common commitment, where a group might not be, there's no commitment necessarily, and maybe to each other, but that's about it. Concepts of team and teams work apply throughout all organizations, and they definitely do that. So what's our role as a team leader here? So when I look at the aspect of a role in a team, my role is I look at that as being a facilitator, okay? And that facilitator is a person who is basically, in one way or another, molding the team to do their work, removing barriers, throwing out ideas, getting them to work towards an aspect. They don't necessarily have to be, I don't look at this as I'm going to lead this team. No, what I'm doing is I'm facilitating. I'm inserting in comments. I'm asking questions at the right time. I'm putting 2 or 3 people together who I think would work well together. That's my asset. That's what I do in a team. And then keeping the team on course, making sure they're working towards that goal. And then, of course, if there's conflict, then as the leader, I would step in and help negotiate out our way through that interpersonal conflict. So it's important to understand that typically, when you think of a leader's role in the team, it's not about, and it goes back to that relationship theory that we talked about earlier, and the fact that really teams are, it's not about each individual in the team, it's about the team and about how that they can be productive. So when you take a look at some key roles of this, building and inspiring trust, coaching, facilitating, support, expanding the team's capabilities. In other words, pushing them a little bit more beyond where their comfort level is. Anticipating and influencing change, okay? A lot of times I'll switch team members out after a while just to be able to get a different result and to change things. Enable and empowering group members. Again, it's the same type of thing. It's about the relationship, understanding your team members and how to encourage them to do their best work. And here are some actions that you can take to get there, okay? Understanding the couple of these I'll point out, understanding the group emotional intelligence. This is a little bit different. It's understanding each individual's emotional intelligence, but it's also understanding what the actual outcome of the entire group's and emotional intelligence, because the group takes on its own identity. And that's where you've really got to really judge where the individuals are and where the group is, and then manage that aspect of it. Serving as a model of teamwork, sharing collaborative leadership, definitely establishing that urgency, that sense of urgency and direction sometimes. If the group gets off track, you got to pull them back on. And we're going to talk about e-leadership in a minute for virtual teams, because it works a little bit different on the virtual side. Inquiring structure, policy. These are situations and things that you'll actually take that you actually have to get within the organization to ensure that it works. Using institution rituals and ceremonies, emphasizing group recognition, blending representatives from domestic companies with foreign nationals on the team. So you're wanting that diversity on the team. Those are things that have to be built in structurally. That's what the tough part is that there is that structural component built in here. These are a little bit more of, these are actions that you take. And a lot of them are kind of the same as we talked about before, but on this other side here, we've got this developing a norm of teamwork based on cooperative theory. So you really want to, these are techniques that you're going to use to promote the actual cooperation between the group. So, they talk about cooperation theory, but really it's about getting them to work together. Excuse me there for a second. And what you really want to do is get them, take out the politicking. And get them to accept everybody in the group. Make sure that we're working in the spirit of collaboration and not competition. Encouraging everybody to treat each other as they were customers. That's a big one there. And kind of develop a code of conduct between the group. Virtual teams work a little bit differently. But they are a huge impact now on a lot of things. So that's why we really need to take a look at that. Virtual teams are not going away. That doesn't mean that they're going to totally be endorsed, but they are still going to be. They're definitely going to be one where it's going to take a little bit of time to. They're not going to go away. It's just COVID-19 took care of that. We're going to be working in virtual teams. As well as this aspect of the gig economy, which is this aspect where you're going to be working. A lot of times a team might include 2 or 3 people who are external to the organization, and you're going to have to loop them in. Marketing is a big one of those right now, where even some points of HR are virtual or external to the company. So you're going to want to make sure that you include those into the virtual team environment. And really what you're going to have to do is really, you become the disseminator of information, okay? You really have to outline in a virtual group, you're going to have to take a little bit more of the reins, pulling together a timeline, and then fostering the teamwork to where things are. But you become the communicator and the timeline gauger, basically. So you're really pushing those aspects of how you manage their time, not when they get things done, but when there's deadlines, and how you manage the deadlines with these groups, including the ones that are external. Because you got to remember, those ones that are working in what they call the gig economy, or who works on demand, that sometimes those people are working on different schedules than you are. So when you schedule a virtual meeting, you've got to really loop them in and make sure that they're able to make that meeting. Because a lot of times they work on their own schedules, and they're not only working for you, they're working for other people as well. Leadership practices of effective virtual teams. Okay, again, communication, understanding that the diversity is understood, it's appreciated, and it's your job to leverage that as the leader. Again, the communication, monitoring progress, okay, enhancing the external visibility of the team and its work. Okay, so it's your job to promote that within the company, external to the team. So promote your team. Get those congratulatory notes out there, especially when you're working with your boss. Really, making sure that really that everybody in there is actually working to the fullest extent. And then even in this environment, there's and I'm a big proponent of this. Even if you're working in this environment, you've got to have 1 to 2 face-to-face meetings each year. There's just something about you can get that personal connection that you can't get online. It helps you understand that person all that much better. And maybe I'm just a little bit on the old-fashioned side, but I prefer to have that face-to-face interaction, because then you can read things better. I can use my leadership skills better when I'm seeing those people, at least intermittently, in a physical environment. So you really want to make sure that these are, again, some things that we've kind of touched on before, which means that when you're looking at teams, making sure that everything works within the organization. Okay, these are just the same types of things that the organizational structure has to work for teams and virtual teams. Okay, and these are ways that happen. Some physical structures don't facilitate communication well, and in teams that has to be there. But you get so much more out of working with a team, and I think practicing team-oriented projects actually benefits the company as a whole. You get so much more out of a team than you do each individual. And if you're looking at this, the team leader, this is how, this is where we the leader exchange model, leader-member exchange model works. Okay, you've got a team leader, and then you have in-group members, which typically are ones that are there all the time. You have out-of-group members that are ones that you have to pull in to the group from time to time. Unlike the matrix structure, organizational structure, those groups would be embedded in those teams. Whereas here, out-of-group members, you might need, for instance, if you're looking at solving a manufacturing problem, the operations people may be together, but you may have to pull in an engineer to make sure that things work according to that way. And again, there's sometimes interjecting that out-of-group member in there. You have to manage that a little bit more as the leader. This talks a little bit about, helps explaining why one subgroup of a team may work better, but the other one doesn't, because they don't feel included. This is where you're going to have to really work with with your relationships and pull them in. Out-of-group members treated more formally. This is where they are less likely to experience team fatigue. See, out-of-group members, the way you look at this is that they're those people that you want to pull in, but when you pull them in, you need them to function as smoothly as the in-group is. And that could be a little tough. You're pulling in an engineer, you're pulling in somebody from HR because you're reworking a training manual. Okay, the group may be working really great on the training manual, but you have to really pull in HR. And sometimes those people don't have the same vision that you do, but that's a positive. You can use that as a positive to bring a better product out. But sometimes as the leader, you're going to have to develop that. It's not going to organically take hold. Okay. Different quality relationships. Okay. This is where we kind of look at how relationships happen within how quality relationships function. Okay. So you got these 6 or 7 factors here. And the first one is safety performance. Okay. So when a person, this is about going back, if you go all the way back into Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you want to make those people feel safe. Okay. And that's where fostering that quality relationship is going to take them making sure that they feel safe in this aspect of in this environment. Transformational effects, we talked a little about that. Transformational leadership, how can you make them improve? The leadership status, the extra role behavior. In other words, how does one build, we start taking on a different role within the group, trying to encourage them to do that. Satisfaction with teamwork. So in other words, can they be satisfied with the team's function? Some people are very individual minded, and that's where, and they won't gain satisfaction within the teamwork. So that puts a strain on a quality relationship. treatment of in-group versus the out-group members. We kind of talked a little bit about that before. You got to really pull those out members in, especially if you need them. Then the reciprocity between the leaders and the members. So that ties them back into the transformational effects, as well as the leadership status and the safety performance. The reciprocity, in other words, that give and take between the members and the leader. This is how you manage that and make that good quality leadership. All right, let's look at motivation. And we talk about motivation through engagement. Okay, engagement is commitment to work with their employer. Engagement is that level of activity that a person is associated with when they're trying to do their best. And sometimes each level of engagement is different for each worker and towards their employer. And that goes back to kind of motivation and what motivates them. So high levels of engagement mean high levels of personal investment into the tasks that are there. And it's definitely an individual's involvement, satisfaction, commitment, enthusiasm. Transformational leaders are really good about keeping them engaged. Engagement with employees, it's a multifaceted animal. So you've got to make sure that everything plays well within itself. You as the leader plays a large factor in their engagement, but also other things come into play as well as external factors, and where you've got to really kind of weigh these in and out. So really got to pay attention to, and it goes back to those relationship aspects that we've been talking about pretty much all throughout the course here. Okay. Engagement is definitely an implication of how well you're going to do or not do. Okay. If you have more engaged, if you have a lot of engaged employees, it's actually been proven that you will have higher earnings per share. So that's an important factor to keep employees engaged. And between the keys here are leadership, motivation, and coaching techniques. Engage, and that the leaders need to use motivation and coaching to keep people engaged. That's part of that is true, but the part of motivation that's there is external to us as well. You got to look at the fact of things like organizational culture. Those are all play an important part in worker engagement productivity. So it's one of those where we can impact it a whole lot, but there's still going to be that 20-25% that we can't impact. And I can tell you from experience, those external factors can be weighing, and they can turn into a huge demotivator. Okay, so when you look at expectancy theory, okay, which is effort, you expect effort, which includes coming out of effort, you expect performance. Okay, this is where I kind of led into this a little prematurely there. You get the external environment and the ability, which play into performance. Okay. So if the person can do the job functionally, that's ability, and the environment is such that it is productive, then you will have which leads to instrumentality, which leads to outcomes. Okay. So the biggest part of this is these two middle factors: the environment, which is internal and external. Okay. Internal environment can be anything from, how well it's air conditioned or not air conditioned. How much are you pushing them to pick items like Amazon, when you're assembling orders, those types of things. How much automation is there? And then the ability of the person to perform the job. Everybody has different abilities. Okay, so that performance will be affected by what their ability is. So then we come into this aspect of coaching. Okay, coaching, just like a sport, okay, is an interaction between two people. In a sport, it would be obviously the athlete and the coach. In the case of this, it's the leader or the manager and an employee. The purpose of that interaction is to be able to learn how to do the job better. Okay, or learn how to do the job at all if you're first hired. Okay, you're going to need to put yourself out there and show them how to do the job. Okay, so that requires some interpersonal risk. You're going to have to show them what you know. in my world, people like to guard recipes like they were treasured. They were, Captain Hook's booty treasure. Okay, you've got to put yourself out there, show them how to do things, and trust that they're going to be able to do that the way you want them to do, and then focus on how to get them to grow and develop. Okay, basically, how, going back to that transformational leadership style, how are they going to grow? How are they going to develop? Push them forward. Just like Coach to be the best that you can be. Okay. So when you look at expectancy theory of motivation, it has three components. Okay. Valiance, which is the attractiveness of the outcome, which could be anything, and which could be anything that stems from performance. Okay. So, sometimes it's the work itself. Sometimes it's that bonus at the end. There's definitely a worth or an attractiveness of outcome. Instrumentality is the individual's assessment of the probability that they're going to be able to do that. Okay, and then expectancy is going to be that individual's assessment of the probability of how much effort they're going to need to correctly perform that task. So when you look at these components and pushing them forward, you balance all of those. Okay, you try to understand what they're expecting out of it. Okay, what their expectancy is, what they're making sure they have the proper tools. That's the instrumentality, and then making sure that it's worth something when it comes out. That's what you look at with expectancy theory. These are some ways that we can look to really push them with expectancy theory. In other words, determine what kinds and levels of performance are going to be needed to achieve those goals, to achieve the organization's goals. Make sure the performance level are attainable by the individuals. Okay, train and encourage them. Okay, make explicit the link between rewards and performance. You sell X number of cars, you get this much bonus. Make sure the rewards are significant enough. If the rewards aren't big enough, so a $25 gift card may not be big enough for that type of performance. Work in opposition and the effectiveness of the reward. Explain the meaning and implications of other things that might happen, and then understanding individual differences and balances. Okay. Goal theory. This is where we take our values, and this is where we set some goals, okay, for individuals. And goals need to be specific, need to be realistic, but they also need to be a little bit hard. They can't be easy. They've got to be accepted by the person. We use them to evaluate performance. We also evaluate feedback and rewards by them. And they can be set by the team, or they can be set by individuals. Just depends on how you work those together, and that they're learning oriented. So in other words, the individual is going to learn something from that. This slide here is the one I like, because this is the one that costs you nothing. Okay. Using recognition and pride to motivate others, or it costs you minimally, I should say. Motivating others with recognition and praise is a big one. Okay. Saying thank you at the end of the job, saying thank you at the end of a shift. Get that direct application of positive reinforcement. Great job. You did a fantastic job today on that piece. Okay. All those things are great positive enforcement, and if they don't cost you anything. Recognition programs to reward and motivate employees should be standard practice. Okay. I know still in a lot of places they're not. People are proud of their work and want to be recognized for good deeds. So, when the employee of the month, the employee of the quarter, those are all recognition for good deeds. Recognition in any form is a strong motivator, because it goes to back to that Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Okay. Going into the safety and then the intrinsic values stages. Engagement increases when they feel cared for and valued. And most workers do not receive enough recognition. And this is something even that I have to really work on really, really hard. Sometimes you get busy and you move beyond that, but you can't. This is such an important factor that you've got to make sure that they receive that recognition all the time, and make sure that they know that they're valued and that you value them. But I know it's tough at times, and that's where it really can be tough. Gratitude and genuine gratitude is really what is really the way it is. You know, just giving them, like I was said in the last slide, thank you. You know, great job. I really appreciate you today. You know, at the beginning of a meeting, basically get kudos for those that met time goal lines and or had some great customer interaction. Any of those types of accomplishments in front of the teams would really really benefit the team as a whole, because it shows your A, that you care, and B, it motivates them to possibly get that same type of thing. Pride can be a motivator when you appeal to pride. Like I said, sometimes it's just about getting the job done right. I'm a big proponent of that aspect of it. Receiving a gift or a bonus is an intrinsic motivator, extrinsic motivator, I should say. Those times, yeah, we can still do that, although these are sometimes tough. We should not be focusing so much on the money, but on recognition symbols. Okay, that's where you really want to do is how are you recognizing people? Recognize the small things, because that's what attracts the pride. In coaching, again, you need to really focus in on that aspect and telling them working with coaching brings that employee to those new levels. And it goes back to transformational leadership. The more of a transformational leadership that you are, the easier the coaching becomes, and you'll be able to handle it. Coaching here in the workplace, as a leadership, you're here trying to define, build relationships, give feedback, provide regular on the spot feedback, listening, helping remove obstacles, giving emotional support and empathy, working together on solutions. Okay, these are all different ways that you can use coaching with your team. So take a look at those. I've used probably most of these because, again, it goes back, my leadership style happens to be more transformational. So when you do that, these all come in that same aspect and makes coaching a whole lot easier. That wraps up week 5 for us. And I hope that everybody has had a good week, and we'll be seeing you